Good morning, students. Yes, the laptop is looking blank and white because the NCRT website apparently has gone on strike, and that's the reason it is showing so. And that's why in the left corner, what I can see is only the error message here. So, yesterday we had finished the first printed book in the chapter of changing cultural traditions. Today we get on, we had discussed how important printing had become, and the enormous role that it played in the spread of knowledge and different varieties of knowledge in different subjects across the world. Whether earlier it knowledge meant only about theology, that is the study of religion, but gradually now we had started seeing that people from different walks of life had now started taking interest in mathematics, medicine, astrology, uh, medicine and surgery, everything, everything. And then suddenly a whole new world had opened up, and people had started inventing, discovering things, wanted to see the world, and and got fascinated by whatever they read about different places, wanted to visit them. So that's how printing had been very important in opening up the world for rest of the people like us. A new concept of human being, one of the features of humanist culture, was a slackening of the control of religion over human life. So naturally, when these things had started growing, so the space for religion had started shrinking. Uh, and of course we had completed this, that yes, it is not that the Italians were did not like or had lost faith in God and divinity, but these areas had also started occupying a huge amount of space. Humanism also implied that individuals were capable of shaping their own lives through means other than mere pursuit of power and money. This ideal was closely tied with the belief that human nature was many sided, which went against the three separate orders that feudal society believed in. So it is essentially, it is now trying to students tell you that once like the famous Maslow's triangle is once the and his theory that once the basic needs of human beings is taken care of, that is food, shelter, clothes, then human pursuits start you know going into different directions. Now they want to achieve certain other things, basically the fine things in life. Fine things in life does not mean expensive clothes, but fine things in life would mean the other areas of knowledge, which has been always they would have wanted to know, and now they wanted to get into it. Things like, as we just said, the stars and why certain things behave the way they do, the knowledge of human body, anatomy, animals, trees, plants, everything. Now you why? Because you have taken care of the basic necessities of life, painting, art, architecture. All of that suddenly starts becoming very, very important, and it starts playing a predominant role within the society. Now, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote about the human nature in the 15th chapter of his book, The Prince. Prince is a very famous book, The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. So, leaving aside imaginary things and referring only to those which truly exist, I say that whenever men are discussed, and especially princes who are more exposed to view, they are noted for various qualities which earn them either praise or condemnation. Some, for example, are held to be generous and others miserly. Some are held to be benefactors, others are called grasping. Some cruel, some compassionate. One man faithless, another faithful. One man effeminate and cowardly, other fierce and courageous. One man effeminate essentially, students means, as the word suggests, having very feminine characteristics. One man courteous, another proud, one man lascivious, another pure, one guileless, that is without spine, another crafty, one stubborn, another flexible, one brave, another frivolous, one religious, another skeptical, and so forth. That is, it is essentially telling about different characters, the different facets of a personality based on which our actions are determined. Um, Because as it is obvious, students, someone who happens to be coward and someone who happens to be very fearful of everything, his actions would be entirely different compared to someone who happens to be very strong, very brave, ready to take on any kind of challenge. So naturally his actions would be different because their personalities are so different. In terms of the aspirations of women, the new ideal of individuality and citizenship excluded women. Men from aristocratic families dominated public life and were the decision makers in their families. They educated their sons to take their place in family businesses or in public life, at times sending their younger sons to join the church. Although their dowries were invested in the family businesses, women generally had no say in how their husbands would run their businesses. Often, marriages were intended to strengthen business alliances. An inadequate dowry could not be, if an adequate dowry could not be arranged, daughters were sent to convents to live the life of a nun. Obviously, the public role of women was limited and they were looked upon as the keepers of the household. So, students, you thought dowry existed only in Indian societies. Now, this should open your eyes because dowry was very much accepted and a standard practice even in the Western societies, even in the European societies at that point in time. And as it very clearly says, the parents who could not pay dowry for their daughters, they would usually send their daughters to the convents to become nuns, okay, and serve their life to the gods. Yes, the position of women in the families of merchants, however, was somewhat different. Naturally, because merchants would be having merchant families rather would be having access to more wealth and more resources. So naturally, they had more money. Shopkeepers were very often assisted by their wives in running the shop. In families of merchants and bankers, wives looked after the businesses when the male members were away on work. The early death of a merchant compelled his widow to perform a larger public role than what was the case in aristocratic families. A few women were intellectually very creative and sensitive about the importance of humanist education, even though the study of letters promises and offers no reward for women and no dignity, wrote the Venetian Cassandra Fedele. Every woman ought to seek and embrace these studies. She was one of a handful of women who questioned the idea that women were incapable of achieving the qualities of a humanist scholar. Fidel was known for her proficiency, that is her skill in Greek and Latin, and was invited to give orations. That is, orations would essentially mean formal speeches at the University of Padua. You remember we had said University of Padua was one of the very important and prominent universities in Italy. Fidel's writings bring into focus the general regard for education in that age. She was one of the very many Venetian women writers who criticized the Republic for creating a highly limited definition of freedom that favored the desires of men over those of women. Another remarkable woman was the Marchesa of Mantua, Isabella d'Este. She ruled the state while her husband was absent, and the court of Mantua in small state was students. Essentially, it is the same story, whether it was there in 13th century, 14th century, and whether it is there today. It is not exactly to do with the status of women all the time. It is not very as black and white as sometimes the historians and the sociologists would like us to believe, where women have been traditionally, they would be, whatever they do, they would be consigned to the dustbins, and the men would be, the places would be reserved for the glory of men. So society has never been this black and white. So this is something which should be understood by you students when you are in class 11 now, because society, any society for that matter, whether a conservative one or something which is a society which would rather proud itself to be a progressive one, it has never been that way, where women will always be lurking from and trying to breathe inside a dustbin, and men would be sitting in the mountain peaks. It has never been that way. Okay, it depends on the kind of society that one comes from. It depends on the kind of background one comes from, whether the social background or the economic background. If someone's father was traditionally mm, a, a, um, a priest in a church, naturally that family would be behaving in a certain sort of way. Not just his daughter would be behaving in a certain sort of way, his son would be behaving in a certain sort of way as well. And similarly, the children of a trader would behave in a certain sort of way. Children of a soldier's family, they would be behaving in a certain sort of way. There, in those families where the father, the brother, the grandfather, everyone is a soldier, even the women in those families would be quite good at sword fight and bows and arrows and spear throwing. Guys, this is what it is about. It depends on the kind of background, not just your social background, but also the professional background that your family might be coming from, right? And it is obvious that the family members, the children, they want to help in the family matters. And if someone's father or someone's family is from business, then they would naturally be looking into the affairs of their businesses. So it is not always to be seen in terms of who is some kind of a victim thing, that because someone is doing this kind of a position job, he or she happens to be a victim, and here necessarily a she happens to be a victim, and men probably having a privileged life. No, it is not been that way. It can never be that way. It is a very simplistic argument to make, which is not true. Of course, women have had to make a great amount of struggle. There's no denying that fact. But it is not as black and white as the history books sometimes want us to believe. Now, debates within Christianity, trade and travel, military conquests. Guys, this we'll do this tomorrow. Thank you.